Hey dudes, it's Lerald. I wanted to run Abyss for a while throughout this league just to see if I could make myself like it. I'm kind of on a kick of trying to make myself like things I've normally hated, and I even made a new character to do this, and I spent a while running Abyss, and it actually worked. I've become a huge fan of Abyss now. This might be my favorite farm strat of the league. Maven boss rushing is close, strong boxes are always in my top 2 or 3, but I think this clears them both. It's cheaper than strong boxes, it's more profitable, and to my considerable surprise, I really did have a lot of fun running this strategy. I also wanted to do a test to see just how important risk scarabs are to actually do this strategy, because I know that risk scarabs are kind of the expected way to do it, but they're very cringe, am I right? There's nothing quite like the feeling of having a perfectly easy, rewarding map all rolled up, zoning into it, and now it has Awakener's Desolation, volatile cores, drowning orbs, and reduced action speed. There's got to be a better way. So let's get into it, but first be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and join our Discord. There is a link in the description. And just as a note on YouTube comments, we're still a 2-person channel. I'm talking right now, but Sunset's usually the one in the comments section. We always try to answer all the comments that we can, but if you have a follow-up, you're better off putting those in the Discord because they're just kind of hard to see in YouTube's comment management system. Alright, so let's talk a little bit about Abyss, about the test that I'm running here. You know, let's peer into the Abyss. So back in Affliction League, Abyss was really good because it generated tons of rare monsters, and they would get juiced by the Wildwood, and, you know, you do the math, Divine Orbs galore. Necropolis League added a lot of huge nerfs to Abyss, but it also added the Edifice Scarab, which basically turns Abyss cracks into chest generation machines, and as it turns out, the Abyss hordes are just very profitable. Edifice Scarabs are also super common, so they're cheapo. The cost of actually setting up and running a strategy is basically just your 16.5 maps, a Delirium Orb, 5 Chaos for the map device, kind of it. So I set up and ran 2 sets of 20 maps, which isn't like a huge test, but I feel like it was enough to get a decent baseline. I did 20 maps with 1 Edifice Scarab, 2 Abyss Scarabs, and 2 Wisp Scarabs, and then for the other tests, I swapped the 2 Wisps out for 2 Risk Scarabs. My initial plan wasn't to even do a test, really. I just sort of got through 20 maps and felt like, I'm having a lot of fun here. I'm gonna run some more of these. What do I do here? Oh, I know, I'll do some Risk Scarabs and compare, why not? So in terms of what we're actually doing in the maps, boss rushing first, always. Full clearing for Eldritch boss altars as well. I want as much quantity or item duplication as I can get my hands on. The only exception for me was like monsters drop Grand Exarch Embers because I don't know, I was running red altars because I'm playing a Chaos Inoculation build. I was trying to level up and it actually worked. Got to like level 98 doing this strategy. I only died once I added in the Risk Scarabs and got a bad volatile core mod. I wanted to get some good Eldritch Ember drops, but I only got 1 Ember mod and across 40 maps, which feels very unlucky. Red's not bad though. Getting duplication mods on maps, currency, and scarabs are all just about as good as getting quantity because the Abysses drop so much of everything. In terms of actually doing Abyss, they're pretty simple. Once the map is full cleared, you just pop the Abysses, follow them, and kill everything. You can click the hordes to open them, but I would not recommend it. I would use a build that has this caster mastery right here. 25% chance to open nearby chests when you cast a spell. Now the issue with this is you do have to be in the caster mastery section of the tree, so that's kind of the top. Mostly the top left maybe. But this is going to be hard to use if you're playing like a ranger or a duelist or something. You can use this as an attack-based build, but it will take some reconfiguring of your spec and it may not be worth it. Like I said, I made a new character to run this strategy, and I have 0 regrets. I think I have negative regrets, actually. This Penance Brand Elementalist has quickly become my new favorite build. 10 out of 10. I highly recommend it, so like check back over the next couple of days for a full update on that. GGG definitely needs to add a similar mastery to attack-based builds to this caster mastery for opening chests quickly. That's like the center square of my bingo board for patch 327. Until then, it's caster build o'clock. So once you reach the end of the line with an Abyss, it'll turn into a Stygian Spire. There's a small chance it'll just turn into Abyssal Depths. That's kind of a bummer, but you know, Stygian Spire's good. That will very slowly shoot monsters out at you. You can full stop DPS on the Spire and kill the monsters instead. This is how you did it back in Affliction League. it'll like slowly chip down the spire's health by killing the dozens and dozens of rares that spawn from every spire. I mostly don't do this. It's pretty slow and boring. I usually just kill it. The Penance Brand Shrine is really hard to stop. It's really just all about the hordes anyway, and I would rather get onto the next abyss rather than like sit there and try and get something out of the rares that come out of the spire. I think the most I ever got out of milking a spire for all it was worth was 1 divine. So slay the spire and move on. Alright, so with that being said, let's take a look at the Atlas passive tree that I'm recommending for this strategy. And I say recommending because I ran a little bit of a different one here. This is the setup that I will put in the spreadsheet, the one that I would like say, yeah, you should probably run this setup here, is a blue altar strategy. Eater of Worlds does give you more quantity. It does give you larger amounts of currency and scarab duplication than you can get out of red altars, and so it is technically better. But red altars work better for my build. I would say the only real downside of running red altars as opposed to blue in this setup, if you're able to run both, is you're already coming over here to get some points into this little section here that gives you some more monsters out of your abysses. Not a huge deal if you don't take this, but since I don't have to spend any points on travel to get to blue altars, whereas I do have to spend 1 to get over to red altars. I also want to take Word of the Exarch in a red altar setup, so that's like 2 points I have to spend on red altars that I don't have to on blue altars. There's also a little bit of like flexibility, for lack of a better word here. You could take singular focus in your strategy if you want. I didn't. I just said like, I'll take any tier 16.5s that I can find. So like you could run a setup that looks like this, like drop the blue altars out entirely, and then you'd have to kind of like, you know, sacrifice a couple of points somewhere. Remarkable Relics is pretty widely regarded as a good node. Sir Gog recently put out a video where he talked about how actually it's quite bad and very, very, very overrated by the player base. And I gotta say, I didn't run it in my strategy, and I found like 3 or 4 Awakening Scarabs in the span of a 20 map test with Risk Scarabs. So I think it was 3. So, you know, maybe this isn't very good. Maybe I just like high rolled, but either way, this is the setup I think I ran for red altars. You know, this worked pretty well. Very, very close to the blue altar setup. So because we're getting tons of everything, currency and scarabs and so on, I'm just taking the outer quant wheel. I'm not taking the inner quant wheel because I don't really want to spend 6 points to get 3 quant and 15 rarity. You could, but it doesn't help. The rarity doesn't help with scarabs or currency, so yeah, I didn't really think it was worth that many points for that. Taking all the map mod effect we possibly can get as usual, taking invasive adversaries because it is more monster packs, that's good. We're taking a lot of the Abyss nodes, but not 100% of them. This whole section up here just is like a huge multiplier of everything that's valuable for Abysses. You know, tons of like magic monsters coming out of the Abysses, tons more monsters in general, and then you're basically always getting 4 pits in all of your Abysses, which means more cracks, which means more possibility of getting more hordes out of every single Abyss. We're obviously taking all the Scarab nodes we can reasonably. I'm blocking a lot of stuff. I'm not blocking Ultimatum or Blight because I feel like they have pretty good Scarab drops, although you maybe could drop Blight because it drops a lot of regular Blight and Blight Heart Scarabs, and those are totally worthless. You could do that. You could also potentially not block Minor, like not take Minor Strike if you just want to have the chance of having Bismuth spawn. That can be useful for getting more stuff out of the monsters in your maps. You obviously don't want to take Love by the Sun. You don't want to block Abyss from spawning. And then Harvest Scarabs are good, so you want those as well. Then the rest of the Abyss nodes, it's kind of a 50-50 split between which ones are like really good and which ones are totally bad. Like Votive Horde is terrible. Awakened Depths is actively bad. Inspired Darkness is basically worthless as well. Like I don't care if a Stygian Inspire drops like level 98 gear. That's worthless. But Underground Kingdom, that's going to spawn a bunch of extra Abysses based on your pack size, and you are going to be running tier 16.5 maps, so your pack size is going to be huge. So you're going to get a lot of Abysses out of that, a lot of monsters out of them. Abyssal Army helps with XP and, monster spawn rate, whatever the amount of monsters that are spawning. So just a lot of stuff in the tree that really synergizes to make Abysses be this like volcano, just this eruption of monsters spawning out of every single pit. All right, now let's talk about the Scarabs that we're running. So Abyss Scarab of Edifice, this is like the main event here, right? You know, this is what causes the Abyss cracks. to spawn hordes, and there's a bit that you can do to game this by, like, making the right map choice. I didn't bother to do that. I kind of wanted to, like, specifically intentionally low roll and see how good it would be if I did everything wrong, and it still was very good. I was still very happy with how it came together. But yeah, this is how you get the hordes to spawn in the first place, so this is just mandatory. There's no way around using that. And then I really wanted to run 2 regular Abyss Scarabs, this is 2 more Abysses, more chance to spawn hordes, like, pretty simple, right? You're able to get 3 Abysses out of your map device as well. We are obviously going to run that. And then the thing that I played around with was running either 2 of these Wisp Scarabs so that monsters from the Abysses would be empowered by 4,000 Wildwood Wisps, kind of an Affliction League light kind of deal. The issue with this is if you do find a Wildwood in your maps, they don't stack with each other. You'll either get the Wildwood Wisps, that you got out of the map, or you'll get the Wisps out of the Scarab. Kind of a bummer. I have a feeling that Risk Scarabs may wind up getting nerfed in the coming league. I hope that occurs, and I think if it does, I think Wisp Scarabs will be there to basically, like, steal their lunch money, because Wisp Scarabs are really good. They're really good. They're shockingly underpriced right now. They're less than 10 chaos each. They're great. The thing is just that Risk Scarabs just do what they do better. They're harder for sure. 2 random modifiers, even with them not getting scaled up by map mod effect, is just really brutal when they add stuff like volatile cores and all the stuff I mentioned before, drowning orbs, stuff like that. They're just really, really nasty. But they're very rewarding. They can add more currency, whatever. Obviously they're going to add a bunch of quant as well, and that does seem to interact with the hordes. I did feel like I got lots more stuff out of the hordes when I was running Risk Scarabs, whereas Wisp Scarabs do not affect the hordes, they just affect the monsters. So as I mentioned, we're putting Abyss in the map device, pretty basic, right? Abyss will give you 3 Abysses, so you're going to get 3 out of that, 2 out of the Scarabs, and then at least 1 out of your Atlas passive tree, possibly 2, so you're going to get like 7, 6 to 8 Abysses in every map, I think is pretty reasonable. Technically speaking, you could just run more Risk Scarabs if you really wanted to, like, hurt yourself, you wanted to feel some pain. You could just run like an Edifice and 4 Risks. That's probably the most profitable approach. Maybe it's an Edifice, a regular Abyss, and 3 Risks. Either way, running more than 2 Risks is just, I don't know, it felt painful to me. I didn't want to do it. All right, and let's talk about the maps that I'm actually running, the map rolling that's going on. So I've eaten all of my Dunes maps already. I was not running Corrupted 8 mod maps. I did actually hand roll these, so I just regular chiseled them. If you wanted to, you could use the currency chisels, the Maven's Chisel of Avarice. If you get a really good more currency mod on the map, you could throw that on there. Or you could do the Maven Chisel of Scarabs. Like, those could work as well if you get a really good more Scarab roll. I aimed for 100% more currency, and then whatever else I could get, more maps is good. That means more chances at tier 17s and other tier 16.5s. More Scarabs is obviously great. You might get Awakening Scarabs or, like, Containment Scarabs, whatever, that's good. But more currency was always the main thing, right? So this is like an example map that's pretty good. I would roll these until I was happy with the mods. Maybe exalt them if I had 5 mods on them, or they were really choice and I had 4. I might spend 2 exalts, but that was pretty rare. And then I've eaten most of my Deli Orbs, but yeah, slap them with just 1. That's it. There you go. 6 mod map, more currency of at least 100%, 1 Deli Orb. You could do this in regular tier 16s, in which case I wouldn't use the Deli Orb at all. But yeah, this is the setup I went with. I was very happy with it, and it also was very good for XP, other than the Risk Scarabs introducing some deaths. I thought it went really well for getting a lot of XP. Like I said, I was making my way up to, like, I think I started this at like level 96 or so, or maybe 97, and I'm 25% of the way through 98, so that feels pretty decent. In terms of your map choice, Lighthouse is the best map to run for Abyss. The specific layout of that area around the base of the lighthouse causes the cracks to, like, run a lot longer than they do on other maps. And that means more hordes will spawn, which means more money. I ran Dunes for the first 30 maps because it's what I had, and I kind of like Dunes map. Then I swapped over to Defiled Cathedral because I have a bunch of tier 17 or tier 16.5 Defiled Cathedrals, and I just wanted a change of scenery. Maybe I should have stuck with Dunes, but I have the same div cards on both. The tier 17 maps that drop from both. Fortress and Sanctuary are basically the same in terms of value, and I actually had a lot more fun in Cathedral. I think I just like the map more now. Again, fun matters more to me than anything else, and I pretty much made exactly the same currency per map from Cathedral as I did from Dunes. Jungle Valley's also a fan favorite due to not having the boss spawned in from the start of the map, and so you don't have to like boss rush for good altar mods. It drops Abomination map, which is a bad tier 17, so not really my favorite personally. Alright, so that is all of the setup. Now let's talk about results. So this is my dump tab from the 20 maps where I ran with Wisp Scarabs. As you can see, I got a lot of tier 16.5 maps, 10 tier 16.5 Dunes, and then 9 non-Dunes maps. I also got 10 Fortress maps, pretty good. In terms of raw currency, I got 26 Divines, 15 Valdos, I got 1 Voidborn Reliquary Key, I got like 16 Exalts, which does feel a little weird that I got so many more Divines than Exalts. I think I got lucky on like 1 or 2 currency duplications on Divines, but ultimately I think I just kind of lucky rolled on the Divines here. 2 Sacred Orbs as well is kind of nutty. And then only 24 Cartography Scarabs of Risk, no real high value uniques or anything like that. So the value on this tab, according to Wealthy Exile, was 81 Divines or so earlier today. Now it's 80. That's fine. In terms of the price of running this, because Wisp Scarabs are a little bit cheaper than Risk, it was around 1 Divine, maybe very slightly less, like 0.98 Divines or something per map. But I think it's safe to just say it costs 20 Divines to set up 20 maps and run them. And one thing that doesn't get calculated correctly in Wealthy Exile is that your 16.5s. So Dunes, as a tier 16.5, it's worth about 0.7 Divines. So we can just say that's 7 Divines for 10 of them. And then all these other rando maps, I think, are half a Divine each. So we can call that 4.5 plus 7. So like 11.5 Divines. And then we add that with 80 and subtract 20, right? So 71 Divines over the course of 20 maps is 3.5 Divines. I think that seems pretty reasonable. That's pretty good. That was pretty consistent with what I had going on. I would say like I started kind of strong. I think I was, after like 10 maps, I was at like 4.5, and then I had hit like kind of a drought for a few maps, and then I finished strong again. So like it was all right, but I would say that like whatever 10 to 15 map range was a little bit of a down spell. It kind of seems to come and go in bunches. Like I definitely noticed some of the maps that had really high more currency rolls were actually like disappointing, and then I'd have a map that had like I don't know, 100% more currency on it. I'd get like 4 raw Divines from that. So I don't know. RNG is RNG, I guess. Now I would say that this strategy probably took around 8 to 9 minutes a map. I think we could say 8. 60 divided by 8 is like 7.5 maps per hour. So if you said like 3.5 Divines per map, and you said you could actually do 7.5 maps per hour, that's like 26 or 27 Divines. I think that's pretty good. I think that's actually quite good for a no-risk Scarab strategy. Now, to compare it with the other set of maps that I ran here, this is the second dump tab. It is 112 Divines worth of stuff in this map. This dump tab, as you can see, it's quite a lot more full. I got a lot more risk Scarabs out of the deal. I got 71 of them. I got way fewer tier 16.5 maps. So like tier 16.5 maps in the first strategy carry hard. I got a lot more tier 17s though. Don't really know what to make of that. I did get a Lionized Glare, 1 random T0 unique, and then just a handful of kind of whatever. But I got fewer div orbs, like divine orbs and exalted orbs, 23 and 11, as opposed to 26 and 16. I got 10 Valdos, just a flat exact 10. I got 1 sacred orb, still got 1 Voidborn Reliquary Key. But I got 3 Awakening Scarabs. Like, I got a lot more Scarabs and a lot more tier 17s in this strategy. You know, I mean, RNG is RNG. But I did get conspicuously fewer, like, raw currency items of high value. Valdos, Divines, Exalted Orbs, than I did in the previous strategy where I was doing Wisps. So I do think I saw, just kind of thinking about it anecdotally, I do feel like I saw a lot more raw divine drops from rare monsters that were wisped up in the first strategy, which kind of makes sense. And I saw a lot more just random scarab drops from hordes in the second strategy. You know, that would account for the like massive gulf in risk scarab, 71 in the second strategy versus 24 in the first. And so just in looking at the second setup here, I have, what is this, seven tier 16.5s, which we would say that's like 3.5 divines, plus only 2 tier 16.5 dunes, which still feels wrong. We call that, 1.4? So we could just say 5, about 5 divines worth of maps here that aren't getting counted in Wealthy Exile. So 112 plus, we'll say 112 plus 5, that's 117. I still think the cost of this, even though I was running like 5 dunes or 10 dunes and 10 defiled cathedrals. Defiled cathedrals are a little bit cheaper. Risk scarabs are not. The cost basically still just wound up at like basically being the same, about 1 divine per map. So we'd say like 117 minus 20, same deal. And then divided by 20, we're talking about 4.85 divines per map. Pretty significant difference, 3.5 versus 4.8. Definitely more profit per map. However, the maps were slower. Some of this is going to be build, like the build you're playing, build construction is definitely going to play a role in this. And, also just like whatever, the difficulty of the different mods, like having to run away from volatile cores, having to stand out of whatever, Awakener's Desolation and Searing Exarch runes, like that kind of stuff does make the map slower. So I do feel like I was probably like, a solid minute or minute and a half longer on every map. So even if we just said like 9 minutes a map, so like 60 divided by 9, let's say 6.6 minutes per map, or 6.6 maps per hour rather, times 4.85. So we're looking at like 32 divines per hour with risk scarabs. That's a decent difference, 26 versus 32. It's like not game changing. I think for my own personal comfort, I kind of feel like Wisp Scarabs really did get the job done in terms of like being fun and viable and like good enough for Jazz. It does kind of make me want to play around with like a 3 or 4 Risk Scarab strategy and just see like how does that compare. Is it just unplayable, unplayably slow, excruciating? I'm sure like the potential for dying a whole bunch doesn't sound very fun. It's totally deathless, very smooth with the Wisp Scarab. One thing I will say, I didn't put this on my notes, is I did switch my mercenary over to running a Defiance of Destiny. I never had any more deaths once I did that. I did have a few deaths, and that kind of slowed things down with the Risk Scarabs. So maybe if I had had this on him from the beginning with the Risk Scarabs, it would have been a little bit quicker, but I don't really think so. They were definitely a lot slower than with the Wisps. But yeah, other than that, I think they wound up both being quite good strategies. I really would recommend either. I think it pretty much just boils down to like your tolerance for pain. I think my final takeaway is that Risk Scarabs are definitely the best. I think that's pretty much agreed upon by everyone, but Wisps were surprisingly good. I think they were a lot closer than I had expected them to be, ultimately. I definitely think they're good enough to like, good enough for Jazz, right? I think they're good enough to do unless you really want to min-max it for all it's worth, even at the expense of the pain that comes with random map mods. But I think if you don't want to deal with that frustration, I think just doing Abyss with Wisps is absolutely good enough, especially if you could do them a little bit quicker. So that's Abyss. I can't believe I'm going to say it, but I really like it. I think it might be my favorite strategy now. I really dig it. All right, that's it. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and join the Skipping Sleep Studio Discord so you can say hello to me and Sunset if you haven't already. And finally, thank you to all of our channel members. If you want to support us so we can keep making more PoE content, become a channel member as well. Thanks for watching. Bye.